Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen.
Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth. I will only
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 56, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It is early Friday morning, December the 2nd, and I'm in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama. Also, I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. Happy belated Thanksgiving, my tools, my people. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I definitely did. We got to spend time with my wife's family over in Georgia. Shout out to Uncle Dennis and Aunt Alice. And then we went to see my family for Thanksgiving. Got to catch up with my parents. Got to spend time with my sisters and brother-in-laws and all my nieces and nephews. We to that point now. We all married. We all have children. My 6-year-old is the oldest of the cousins. She's the one who is in charge. She runs the show. She takes care of them babies. And it's 6 of them. We get together as 6 of them kids, 6 and under. We got kids crawling, kids just learning to walk, and kids sprinting around the house everywhere. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. We got to spend a few days together, got to be with family, got to eat some good food. It was time well spent. It was nice to be out of town, nice to see family we haven't seen in a while, and a good reminder of what's really important. That's what Thanksgiving is supposed to be about, right? A time of giving thanks, a time of resetting, a time of rest, a time of remembering what it is that really matters in this world. And I needed that. Everybody needs that from time to time, but hey, I needed that. And the wife and I pulled back up in the driveway, got home about 10 o'clock at night at the end of our Thanksgiving journey. And we just looked at our home with a new roof that just got put on, our home with both vehicles parked in the driveway, our home with our 2 little kitty cats, our dog, and our two fish that are still alive. The birthday fish, we talked about that on the show before. Go back and it's 2 of them. It was 11. It's 2. Looked at our kids in the backseat of the car. One who was wide awake the entire trip. One who slept the whole way home. And we just knew that we are blessed, that we are favored, that we have a good life, that we're okay. We're thankful. We have a lot to be thankful for. And life is hard. You go through periods of loneliness and anxiety, times when stress is high, mortgage to pay and bills to pay. There's never enough money. There's always more work to be done. There's always situations and circumstances that aren't what they should be or what you wish they were or what you have even worked for. Okay. But at the end of the day, it's about family. And it's about friends who are like family. And it's about spreading hope and light and joy in the world. And Thanksgiving break was a good reminder that we may not have everything that we want, and we may struggle from time to time, but hey, when it comes to the stuff that matters, we've got it in spades. We're blessed to be a blessing. I hope that you have counted your blessings up over the Thanksgiving holiday. Remember the things that you are thankful for. You got to encourage yourself. Sometimes it ain't nobody there to encourage you. You got to encourage yourself. Look how far you've come. Look at the stuff that you have made it through, the things that you have survived in your life, the progress that you have made. Don't always look at the things that you don't have, the things that you wish were different. Look at the stuff that you do have. Make you a little list. Get you out a little piece of paper, little piece of papyrus. Get you one of them fancy quill pens. Get you a feather. Dip it in some ink. And put down on paper, okay? I'm not talking about a note on your phone. Don't type it on your computer. Don't use your Tim Cook Apple iPad. Get out a piece of paper. Get you something made from a tree and put some ink on it. And make you a list of 5 things that you are thankful for. 5 ways that you are blessed. And take a minute to reflect on that. And then, hey, if there's still stuff that you want to improve, make you another list. Make you 5 goals. 5 things that you want to improve upon. And make you a plan, my babies. And work your plan. And work on becoming more disciplined. But be thankful in the process for how far you have come. Celebrate yourself. Encourage yourself. And I've got a lot to be thankful for. And hey, one thing that I'm thankful for is you. One thing that I'm thankful for is this show and this shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama that somehow gets listened to in every state of our union and in 32 countries across the globe. It does not make sense to me, okay? I'm nothing special. I don't know very much. I'm not a smart man. But for some reason, y'all keep listening. And our listenership, all aboard, our listenership grows from week to week. And I'm thankful for that. And I saw on social media and on Twitter this week, everybody was doing their Spotify Wrapped for the year, where Spotify puts out a list for you of your most listened to songs. And then I saw some podcasters that I follow were putting out their Spotify Wrapped for their show. And I did not know that that was a thing, but that is a thing. So your boy asked Jeeves. You remember Jeeves? Yeah, I asked Jeeves, how do I find my Spotify Wrapped for In the Shed with Wes Anderson for the year 2022? And we're not even done, okay? We're going to put out 3, 4, 5 more episodes before the year is over. But what have we done on Spotify? How has our show grown? Has our show grown on Spotify? So I looked up our Spotify Wrapped for In the Shed with Wes. And I was amazed. I was amazed. This is what it said. It said on Spotify, our followers increased by 75% this year. That's 2/3, my baby. Quick math. It said our streams increased by 60% this year. Our hours listened to increased by 34% this year. We put out 3,000 minutes of content. And we're in the top 10 podcast lists for 44 different people. We're top 5 for 34 different users of Spotify. And we are the number 1 podcast listened to for 12 people on that app. It's 12 of y'all. And I know they're not in my family. My family don't listen to this show. All the people I know that listen to this show are random people that I have met on the internet and a whole bunch of folks in India. I love you, India. Shout out to my friend Thomas. Thomas has been listening to my show. Shout out to my cousin Ryan. He says that sometimes he listens to the show. But other than that, and of course, Meemaw, we made it. My family doesn't listen to the show. Gives me the freedom to talk about my family. But for 12 of you guys, we were the most listened to podcast on the Spotify app, which just blows my mind. Also, check this out. We were in the top 30% of most followed podcasts. Of all podcasts, we were in the top 30% of most followed podcasts, and we were top 20% of most shared podcasts globally. The top 20% of most shared podcasts globally. Make it make sense. I don't know. But I thought that was worth sharing. I thought it was incredible. And I'm super thankful for you, our listeners, for your support, for your engagement, for sending in emails, for listening to the show, for spreading the word. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you very much. Spotify Wrapped, that was super encouraging. We're growing. We're growing, my babies. And we're going to keep this thing going as well. So from the bottom of my oversized heart, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, enough of that. Let's get to some comments and corrections from our last episode. As we said, our humble little show is being listened to across the globe, 32 countries now in total and counting. We are, of course, being listened to all over this great country of ours, with the US of A making up 50% of our listening audience, followed by India at 41%. We love you, India. The UK and France at 2% each, with Australia, Mexico, Canada, Ireland, Singapore, and Germany rounding out the top 10. Special shout out to our 10 new listeners in Germany this week. We're currently averaging more listeners per episode than ever before. Still true, thanks to you. And we're inching ever closer to both 7,000 followers on Twitter and 6,000 total downloads of the show. You can follow the show on Twitter at InTheShed4. Keep helping us spread the word, and we will keep growing this thing together. As our profile and audience continue to grow, I'm excited to bring you even more unique content that you can't find anywhere else. We bring you the news that matters in a different way. We are truly an independent news show. We've got more conversations that matter coming your way in 2023. I'll be doing several guest spots on other shows in the near future. And we've got a Patreon that's getting ready to launch. No episodes of the show will ever be hidden behind a paywall. That's not how we do things over here. But it will be an affordable way to connect between episodes and help offset production costs. And we've got some paranormal themed t-shirts that we'll be listing for sale as well. Mothman, UFO, Bigfoot, and JFK themed t-shirts. Check out our Twitter page to order those soon. They're comfortable, they feature fun designs, and are an excellent way to support the show. And we're actively seeking advertising partners. Our audience has reached the point that we are able to help your business. So if you're a listener who supports the show and what we do here and have a small business, a side hustle, or something that you'd like to advertise, send us an email at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. We've got the best rates around. We're listened to in all 50 states, and we are a big deal in India. We got a great show for you tonight, but first let's get to some listener emails. Our first email comes from Jimmy from South Carolina, who writes, Wes, are you ever going to talk NFL football again on the show? Did you give up coverage after your Cowboys prediction went up in flames? P.S. You suck. Jimmy just had to throw in right there at the end. P.S. You suck. Jimmy. Thank you for listening to the show, Jimmy. Thank you for taking your time to write in to the show, to sit down at your computer or to pull up your email app on your phone and write me a message in which you tell me, P.S. You suck. Well, James, if I may call you that, you'll be happy to know that we are in fact talking NFL football on the show today. We cover politics, sports, and the paranormal news, and we don't have time necessarily to go in depth into NFL every week. Sometimes we focus more on NBA or on college football, but we're talking NFL football today by chance. And yes, 4 weeks into the season, 3 weeks into the season, I did say that the Cowboys had absolutely no chance, that they wouldn't make the playoffs, they wouldn't win their division, they weren't Super Bowl contenders. And most of that looks to have gone up in flames. But I still like the field. Until I see it, I'm still not betting on a Mike McCarthy coached Cowboys football team to hold up in the playoffs. And I'll stand by that. But thank you for listening to the show, Jim. Our next email comes from Cherry from St. Louis, who says, Wes, I really enjoyed the lost horse story on episode 55. I hope you include more unexplainable wildlife stories. moving forward. Thank you for writing into the show, Cherry. I assume it's Cherry. It's spelled like cherry. And yeah, no news show that I'm aware of covers wildlife in the way that we do on this show. I don't know if that's the only episode you've listened to. Maybe you're new to the shed. But hey, we've had like 3 different episodes where we talk about octopuses, okay? Last week we talked about how a drought in East Africa is affecting the wildlife. We've covered genetically modified mosquitoes. We've gone in depth about trees and how they communicate with each other. It's terrifying, but it's true. We've talked about dogs and how much white people love them. And yes, on our last episode, we talked about a horse that had been missing for 8 years and was finally reunited with its owner. So hey, Cherry, you can expect that we will be covering unexplainable wildlife stories on this show moving forward. Nobody does it like we do here, in a shed, in my backyard, in Alabama. Thank you for writing into the show. And finally, Jay from Miami writes, Wes, have you seen any of Kanye West's appearances on the Lex Fridman podcast, Tim Pool, or on the Alex Jones show? What's your take? What are the chances that you get him in the shed for an interview? Yeah. I mean, I have, thank you for writing into the show, Jay. I've seen clips, I've seen bits and pieces. I saw the entire Lex Fridman podcast episode. I've seen clips from the other episodes. The chances are not good, okay? I don't plan to reach out to Kanye West. I don't think he would come on a show this small, but I don't plan to reach out to the man, and this is why. He's obviously not well. There's something going on there beyond just a difference of opinion or somebody who's being persecuted or somebody who's not been allowed to share their opinion or censorship or whatever the right-wing media wants to say. There's very clearly something going on with his mental health, and he's in a rough place. And I'm not someone who believes in using the hardship of others to further your own audience and to make gains for yourself. I feel like folks are taking advantage of someone who is in a tough spot. And maybe not so much on the Lex Fridman podcast. I feel like he sat down with Kanye to actually give him an opportunity to explain some things, to get to know him, to have a genuine conversation. It kind of went sideways in some ways. But as far as a lot of the other shows go, it's very clear what they are doing and why they're having this man on their platform. And even if it's not to mock him or to make fun of him, in my estimation, it's certainly taking advantage of him. I'm no doctor, I'm no psychologist, but in several of these episodes, it just comes across that he's in this manic state, that he's having a hard time, that he's really struggling, and I'm not about using somebody's hardship and somebody's struggle to further my platform or to make a name for myself or to grow my audience. And I wish that there were more people around this guy who cared about him, who had his ear, who he would listen to, who would say, hey, let's get some stuff figured out. Let's make a plan. Let's take some steps. Let's make sure that we know what we're trying to accomplish when we go on one of these shows. Let's take a break for a little bit. Let's get out of the spotlight. He seems to be, I do not know the man, but he seems to be in a tough place right now. And that's somebody's son, that's somebody's father, that's somebody's sibling. And whatever you think of Kanye West, his opinions, the comments that he made on each of those shows, I feel like he's also being taken advantage of in a way that isn't good for anybody. And we're not about that here on In the Shed. So the chances are very, very small. Even if he called me up tomorrow and said, I'm going to be on your show, I would have to have a long conversation and make sure that he was in the right headspace, that we could have a conversation that was beneficial and healthy for everyone, for the listener, for him, for me. And I do not see that happening. That's my take. That's my opinion, Jay. Just my opinion. You asked, so I'm telling you. That's what I think about his appearance on those shows as of late. That's all the listener emails this week. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics, and let's hit the headlines. GOP senators say they will block military funding unless vaccine mandate scrapped, writes InfoWars. Airbnb under fire for suspected carbon monoxide deaths and faced lawsuit, reports Fox Business. U.S. and France present united front to hold Russia to account on Ukraine, says Reuters. From USA Today, appeals court overturns special master review of records found at Trump's Mar-a-Lago. And finally, Obama stresses importance of Georgia's Senate runoff for padding Democratic Senate majority, and that is according to CNN. Our first story in the world of politics, what's going on with Alabama's executions? Alabama's string of troubled lethal injections, which worsened late Thursday as prison workers aborted another execution because of a problem with intravenous lines, is unprecedented nationally, a group that tracks capital punishment said on Friday. The uncompleted execution of Kenneth Eugene Smith was the state's second such instance of being unable to kill an inmate in the past 2 months, and its third since 2018. The state completed an execution in July, but only after a 3-hour delay caused at least partly by the same problem starting an IV line. A leader at the Death Penalty Information Center, an anti-death penalty group with a large database on executions, said that no other state than Alabama has had to halt an execution in progress since 2017, when Ohio halted Alva Campbell's lethal injection because workers couldn't find a vein. According to Ngozi Nduli, deputy director of the Washington-based group, the only other lethal injection stop before an inmate died was also in Ohio in 2009. So Alabama has more aborted lethal injections in the past few years than the rest of the country has overall, she said. Something has obviously gone wrong with the state's execution procedure, Nduli said. I think Alabama clearly has some explaining to do, but also some reflecting to do about what is going wrong in its execution process, she said. The question is whether Alabama is going to take that seriously. The Alabama Department of Corrections disputed that the cancellation was a reflection of problems. In a statement, it blamed the late-running court action for the cancellation because prison officials had a short time frame to complete its protocol. Prison officials said that they called off Smith's execution for the night after they were unable to get the lethal injection underway within the 100-minute window between the courts clearing the way for it to begin and a midnight deadline when the death warrant expired for the day. The U.S. Supreme Court cleared the way for Smith's execution when at about 10:20 p.m. it lifted a stay issued earlier in the evening by the 11th U.S. Circuit of Appeals. But the state decided about an hour later that the lethal injection would not happen that evening. We have no concerns about the state's ability to carry out the future lethal injection procedures, the Alabama Department of Corrections said in an emailed statement. The department will continue to review its process, as it routinely does following each execution, to identify areas of improvement. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey also blamed Smith's last-minute appeals as the reason justice could not be carried out. U.S. District Judge R. Austin Huffaker Jr. on Friday granted a request from Smith's lawyers to visit with Smith and take photographs of his body. He also ordered the state to preserve notes and other materials related to what happened in the failed execution. Smith's attorney said that they believe he may have been strapped to a gurney for 4 hours, even though his final appeals were still underway. Mr. Smith no doubt has injuries from the attempted execution, and certainly physical and testimonial evidence that needs to be preserved that can and should be photographed and or filmed, lawyers for Smith wrote. Smith, who was scheduled to be put to death for the murder for hire slaying of a preacher's wife in 1988, was returned to death row at home in prison after surviving the attempt, a prison official said. His lawyers declined to comment Friday morning. Corrections Commissioner John Hamm said prison staff tried for about an hour to get the 2 required intravenous lines connected to Smith, 57. Hamm said they established 1 line but were unsuccessful with the second line, which is required under the state's protocol as a backup after trying several locations on Smith's body. Officials then tried a central line, which involves a catheter placed into a large vein. We were not able to have time to complete that, so we called off the execution, Hamm said. The initial postponement came after Smith's final appeals focused on problems with IV lines at Alabama's last 2 scheduled lethal injections. Because the death warrant expired at midnight, the state must go back to court to seek a new execution date. Defense lawyers said Alabama's continued problems show a need for a moratorium to investigate how the death penalty is carried out in the state. Once again, the state of Alabama has shown that it's not capable of carrying out the present execution protocol without torture, federal defender John Palombi, who has represented many death row inmates in the state, said via email. Prosecutors said Smith was one of two men who were each paid $1,000 to kill Elizabeth Sennett on behalf of her husband, who was deeply in debt and wanted to collect the insurance. The slaying and the revelation of who was behind it rocked the small North Alabama community where it happened in Colbert County and inspired a song called The Fireplace Poker by the Southern rock group Drive-By Truckers, who I've seen in concert 3 times. Has nothing to do with the article, but I've seen them. I digress. John Forrest Parker, the other man convicted in the slaying, was executed in 2010. Alabama has faced scrutiny over its problems at recent lethal injections. In ongoing litigation, lawyers for inmates are seeking information about the qualifications of the execution team members responsible for connecting the lines. And I would say that might be valid. If they have 100 minutes and they cannot find and connect an IV, I would say that might be valid. What are their qualifications? Did they just get picked up from a Dollar General? Are they just somebody off the street? I would think any nurse would be able to find a vein and connect an IV line in 100 minutes easily. In a Thursday hearing in Smith's case, a federal judge asked the state how long was too long to try to establish a line, noting at least one state gives an hour limit. The execution of Joe Nathan James Jr. in July took several hours to get underway because of problems establishing an IV line, leading Reprieve U.S. Forensic Justice Initiative, an anti-death penalty group, to claim the execution was botched. In September, the state called off the execution of Alan Miller because of difficulty accessing his veins. Miller said in a court filing that prison staff poked him with needles for more than an hour and at one point left him hanging vertically on a gurney before announcing they were stopping. Prison officials have maintained the delays were the result of the state carefully following procedures. Alabama in 2018 called off the execution of Doyle Ham because of problems getting the intravenous line connected. Ham had damaged veins because of lymphoma, hepatitis, and past drug use, his lawyers said. Ham later died in prison of natural causes. So, this is a wild story. And this is not a good look for the state of Alabama. This is local news. Sometimes we cover world news on the show. We cover news stories in the world of politics from all over our country. This is something local. This is something right here in my home state. And it's not a good look. No matter how you feel about the death penalty. And I'll be honest, I'm not a proponent of it, okay? While I agree with you that there are certain things that people do and crimes they commit that are certainly worthy of the death penalty, I just personally don't believe it's our place to take a person's life. I don't believe in retributive violence. Studies that I have read have shown that life in prison is actually a greater deterrent than the death penalty. It actually costs less money to imprison someone for life than to put them to death. And I'm a man of faith. It's okay if you're not. I'm a man of faith, and I just would rather let God sort them out. I would rather them sit in prison the rest of their life and suffer the fate of having to deal with what they have done on a day-to-day basis every morning, waking up and looking in the mirror, than to just get to escape it quickly. That's me. You disagree, that's okay, but that's me. But no matter what you think about the death penalty, the law states that it has to be carried out in a humane way. The people who are being put to death cannot be tortured. There's rules and regulations, and apparently the state of Alabama cannot follow those rules and regulations. Even with something as simple as putting in an IV. Finding a vein and hooking up an IV. And look, I've been to the doctor before when they've had to draw blood and they've had trouble finding a vein. The nurse practitioners had trouble finding a vein for about 5 minutes. I've been to the doctor where they had to call somebody else in to come help, but they always get it figured out okay. It's not that hard. It's something that you get taught pretty early on, and something that some of us could do on our own. So the thought that the state of Alabama's execution team, the people responsible for following these protocols, can't do so in 100 minutes is absurd. It's absurd. And the fact that Alabama has more called off and more botched executions in the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years, than the rest of the country has combined, hey, there might be a problem here. And the Department of Corrections and the governor and everybody that just kind of, oh, this is the court's problem, and this is, we didn't have enough time, and all of these anti-death penalty groups are mucking it up and are getting in the way. Hey, take some ownership. Take some accountability. Learn to do your job more properly. And probably what needs to happen, this is just my opinion, but it's my show, what needs to happen is that there probably should be a moratorium on death penalties in the state until they get this figured out, until they assess what the problem really is, and put some people in place who can actually do their jobs. It sounds to me like some people need to be out of jobs. Like, we need to get some people in there that maybe know what they're doing. This is why we can't have nice things, Alabama. We can't be last in everything. We can't be below Mississippi and Arkansas in everything. And there's all kinds, a host of problems. When you look at the legal system, the court system, the prison system in the state of Alabama, there is a host of problems that need to be corrected, that need addressing. And this is one of them. Even if somebody is guilty of a crime and deserves to be put to death, to have them strapped into a gurney when their court case is being reviewed, when there's a stay in place, to have them strapped in and hung upside down for hours at a time, you're getting into some territory that's dangerously close, that borders on an issue of inhumane treatment and torture. You have to follow the law, okay? Just because somebody broke the law and they're being put to death for it doesn't mean that you get to break the law. You're there to uphold the law. And it doesn't seem like we can do that very well in the state of Alabama. And Governor Ivey needs to pay attention to this. Needs to address it, needs to take it seriously, needs to take some ownership, needs to put somebody in place who will actually correct the mistakes that are happening. Because this is something that matters. It matters to the families of the victims. It matters to the families of the person who's being put to death. And it should matter to us as well. This is something that has to be corrected. This is a story that needs to be reported on and paid attention to, and we will keep watching closely to see how the state of Alabama addresses it, to see what Governor Ivey does, to see if they take this issue seriously or if they continue to duck responsibility and to minimize. That's not leadership, Kay Ivey. That's not leadership, Alabama Department of Corrections. Do your job. That's what you were hired for. That's what you were elected for. Do your job. Do better, Alabama. Do better. Our second story in the world of politics, when high fashion and QAnon collide. Ever since Dimna became artistic director for Balenciaga in 2015, the storied brand has become a lightning rod for controversy, often intentionally so. For example, their remaking of IKEA's 99-cent shopping bag as a luxury good, putting heels on Crocs, selling destroyed sneakers for $1,850 each, dressing Kim Kardashian in a head-to-toe black body stocking for the Met Gala, and sending models who look like refugees down the runway carrying trash bags made of expensive leather. The outrage provoked by such moments often seemed to be the whole point. Each only bolstered the reputation of Dimna's Balenciaga as a brand that forces consumers to grapple with the very meaning of taste. Now, however, the release of 2 new ad campaigns by Balenciaga, which is owned by Kering, the French luxury conglomerate that also owns brands such as Gucci and Saint Laurent, has taken the public opprobrium to a new level. One campaign featured photos of children clutching handbags that look like teddy bears in bondage gear. Another campaign featured photos that include paperwork about child pornography laws. Together, they ignited a firestorm that traveled from the internet to Fox News, fueled by allegations that Balenciaga condoned child exploitation. The controversy has become one of the most explicit collisions of internet culture, politics, fashion, and conspiracy to date. On November 28th, almost 2 weeks after the storm started brewing and after a series of Instagram apologies that failed to quell it, the brand issued a statement admitting to a series of grievous errors for which Balenciaga takes responsibility. The fashion house announced ongoing internal and external investigations and new controls and said it was reaching out to organizations who specialize in child protection and aim at ending child abuse and exploitation. We want to learn from our mistakes and identify ways we can contribute, the statement read. The fallout began November 16th when Balenciaga published a campaign called Balenciaga Gift Shop. It was shot last month by Gabriele Galimberti, an Italian documentary photographer whose work focuses on the stories our things tell about ourselves. Galimberti had previously made a book featuring images of children with their toys, but he had never shot a fashion campaign before. His photographs featured 6 children clutching destroyed teddy bear handbags, which had first been seen in the brand's Spring 2023 runway show in Paris. The fluffy bears had black eyes, fishnet tops, and leather harnesses. Wine glasses and other gift items were displayed around them. According to Galimberti, these objects, as well as the children and the location chosen for the shoot, had all been selected by Balenciaga, with numerous staff members present during the 2 days of photography. Not long after the gift shop campaign was posted online, a groundswell of outrage began against the images that juxtaposed children in what looked like bondage paraphernalia. 5 days later, on November 21st, Balenciaga released a separate campaign, the brand's 2023 Guard Robe advertising campaign. Social media users zoomed in on images from the campaign that appeared to feature as a prop paperwork from a Supreme Court decision on child pornography laws. The Guard Robe campaign, which included Nicole Kidman, Isabella Huppert, and Bella Hadid as models, was shot in July, months before the gift shop campaign, and took place in an office setting. Looks in the campaign were introduced in a May 2022 show at the New York Stock Exchange. In one of its images, a $3,000 Balenciaga Adidas Hourglass handbag was featured on a desk along with printed copies of the Supreme Court's 2008 decision in U.S. v. Williams. The case examined whether laws banning the pandering or promoting of child pornography curtailed First Amendment freedom of speech rights. Other props in the Guard Robe campaign included the books The Cremaster Cycle by Matthew Barney, which appeared in conjunction with an exhibit of the artist at the Guggenheim Museum, and As Sweet as It Gets by Belgian painter Michael Baramans, whose work has been shown at the David Zwirner Gallery. The gallery has described Baramans' paintings as toddlers engaged in playful but mysterious acts with sinister overtones and insinuations of violence. Some critiques have included images from both campaigns in a way that suggests they're one and the same. One Twitter user who shared photos from the two shoots wrote, "The brand Balenciaga just did a interesting photo shoot for their new products recently, which included a very purposely poorly hidden court document about virtual child porn. Normal stuff." That tweet, among other posts, prompted accusations that Balenciaga was promoting a child pornography campaign and glamorizing violence against children. As online criticism of the campaign spread, the story was picked up across right-leaning media outlets, including the New York Post and primetime Fox News show Tucker Carlson Tonight. The show has helped to publicize and mainstream QAnon, the internet conspiracy theory that a group of Satan-worshipping elites who run a child sex ring are trying to control our politics and media. Here you have a major international retail brand promoting kiddie porn and sex with children, Carlson told viewers on November 22nd, and not promoting it subtly, but right out in the open. The brand's first response to the backlash came November 24th when it apologized for the gift shop campaign and promised to remove the advertisements from its social media channels. "We sincerely apologize for any offense our holiday campaign may have caused. Our plush bareback should not have been featured with children in this campaign. We have immediately removed the campaign from all platforms," read a statement posted to Balenciaga's Instagram account on November 24th. Hours later, a second apology addressing the Guard Robe campaign was posted to the brand's Instagram stories as well. "We apologize for displaying unsettling documents in our campaign," the statement said. "We take this matter very seriously and are taking legal action against the parties responsible for creating the set and including unapproved items for our Spring 23 campaign photo shoot. We strongly condemn abuse of children in any form. We stand for children's safety and well-being." On November 25th, Balenciaga filed papers in New York court initiating a $25 million lawsuit against the production company North 6 and Nicolas Desjardins, who designed the set for the Garderobe campaign. The document, a summons with notice, alleged that the production company and set designers engaged in inexplicable acts of omissions that were malevolent or at the very least extraordinarily reckless. Effectively, the brand claimed that the documents were placed in the campaign photographs without their knowledge and had led to false associations between Balenciaga and child pornography. When contacted by the New York Times, North 6, which manages production details like catering, permits, and crew, declined to comment. So where did the copy of the Supreme Court decision come from, and who approved its use as a prop? The documents came from numerous boxes rented from a prop house, a lawyer for Desjardins, the set designer, wrote in an email statement. But all were supposed to be fake office documents, Balenciaga said in its November 28th statement. They turned out to be real legal papers, most likely coming from the filming of a television drama. Balenciaga, which had the images in hand for months before their release, called the inclusion of the Supreme Court papers unapproved and the result of reckless negligence. Desjardins' lawyer in her statement said there was certainly no malevolent scheme going on. Balenciaga representatives were on set during the shoot, overseeing it and handling papers and other props, and Desjardins, as the set designer, was not responsible for image selection from the shoot, she wrote. Ultimately, image selection would have fallen to the brand, which in its November 28 statement said that it took full accountability for our lack of oversight and control and could have done things differently. Yeah, I would say you could have done things differently, Balenciaga. What an understatement. You could have done things differently. And this story, I saw this online, and I thought that this had to be a deep fake or a case of bad photoshopping or some kind of right-wing conspiracy that had no truth in it, only to look into it further and find out that no, those were actual images from a Balenciaga advertising campaign, two separate campaigns. Which doesn't in fact help your argument, Balenciaga. It doesn't make it better that you had two separate inappropriate campaigns involving children. And this article comes from the New York Times. And some of you might find the New York Times to be credible. You may not. You may trust them. You may not. That's beside the point. This is a story that hasn't really been picked up and covered in the national news media and by mainstream media in the way that I feel like it probably should be. Because this is bizarre. And this is weird. And this is inappropriate. There has to be some kind of explanation more than Balenciaga just saying, we didn't pick the set. And the set designer's like, hey, I didn't pick these papers. And even this article says that Balenciaga had these props in their possession for months. They had several people on hand in both instances to handle and review and oversee and supervise each of these photo shoots and the advertising campaigns. Nobody understood that this was inappropriate. Nobody said, hey, this might not be a direction that we want to go. Let's get a small child up here, surround them with some wine glasses, and hand them a teddy bear that's wearing some bondage gear. Maybe not the best idea. Hey, let's do an ad campaign and let's spread out some papers on this table that mention child pornography. Maybe not the best idea. And it's not just an issue of an oversight or a mistake or somebody not doing their job properly. It's not an issue of a poor decision making or an accident. Or there's something bigger happening here than meets the eye. Because somebody did this intentionally. Somebody did this on purpose. Somebody saw that this was being included. Somebody chose these items to be included in these campaigns, whether they thought people would notice or not. Somebody was trying to make some type of statement. And I saw this story blown up and covered by right-leaning news organizations. I didn't see it covered by the left. And in this article by the New York Times, even the headline is misleading. When high fashion and QAnon collide. This is not an issue of QAnon. Okay. Let's keep it 100. Let's keep it a buck. This is not an issue of QAnon. And we're not a right-leaning show. If you've listened to this show, you know I say all the time. We need both the right wing and the left wing for this beautiful bald eagle to soar. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I am an independent. I did not vote for Joe Biden. I did not vote for Donald Trump. They're both flawed individuals and politicians, just like every other politician that holds office, okay? But we're going to keep it a buck with you. For this headline to say when high fashion and QAnon collide, hey, I've been up front with you. If you believe that JFK Jr. is going to return to save the planet, if you believe that Donald Trump has been working behind the scenes this entire time with the military to rescue our government from this evil satanic cabal, if you believe that some person named Q, some high-ranking official, is posting these cryptic messages on 8chan, and 8kun of all places, to save the world, you need to get in touch with reality. You need to get in touch with reality. QAnon is a bunch of nonsense. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's hogwash. It's not reality. It's LARPing. That's all it is. It's LARPing. And a whole bunch of people got swept up in it. And I've known people personally whose lives were affected greatly by their misguided belief in QAnon. So I'm not a QAnon person, okay? I'm not a QAnon believer or supporter, okay? But to label this as a QAnon issue, look, I've told you that one way that QAnon kind of got some people is they started this slogan, this hashtag, protect the children. And a whole bunch of mamas on Facebook and a whole bunch of people saw that and said, hey, I'm in support of protecting the children. I think that we need to be more careful in our society. I think that we need to stand against sex trafficking. And a whole bunch of people got swept up because QAnon had that as one of their main things and got involved in a whole bunch of nonsense also. But that's not what's happening here. When high fashion and QAnon collide, this isn't an issue of QAnon. This is an issue of a $1 billion fashion company, a high fashion company that deals with celebrities, that shows up on TV, that puts on fashion shows, that advertises internationally, that works with Kim Kardashian and a whole host of others that have giant platforms, putting forth 2 separate ad campaigns involving children or related to children that is completely inappropriate. And it should be alarming. And it should be covered by the mainstream media. Because we deserve some answers. We don't deserve for Balenciaga to just come out and blame the photographer or the set designer and everybody just move on like there's nothing to see here. Somebody along the way chose these items, chose this set design, chose to send some type of message to somebody or to try to hide some type of message. And it's not a conspiracy. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is something that actually happened. I've seen the pictures. Balenciaga came out both times and said it was inappropriate and apologized. They wouldn't do so if this was a made-up story. This is real. It actually happened, and it confounds me. It confuses me. I don't know what is happening here. I don't know what's going on. Kim Kardashian came out and said she's going to continue to work with the company, but she hopes that they do better in the future, that she trusts that they're going to take steps to make sure this doesn't happen again, blah, 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 blah. Highly inappropriate. Incredibly bizarre. And there should be some answers given. We shouldn't only be hearing about this on Tucker Carlson. Why is it not being covered? I don't know. I'm not typically this conspiracy theorist, but there's something here. Where there's smoke, there's fire. There's certainly smoke. This is a real story. Even the New York Times is here reporting on it. They're just not doing so honestly. And that's something that we do on this show, is honesty. They traffic in clickbait. They traffic in misleading headlines. We keep it a buck with you. We keep it real with you. And Balenciaga is up to some weird stuff. It's up to some stuff that crosses every line of what is normal and what is healthy and what should be tolerated in our society. And we got to keep an eye on it. And we got to call it out. And we should demand answers. And we're going to cover it here on In the Shed with Wes. Our next story in the world of politics: Houston residents ordered to boil water after power outage at city plant. Residents of the country's fourth largest city were told to boil water Sunday after pump-driven water system pressure dropped because of an electrical outage, triggering concerns of possible contamination. The boil notice essentially covers Houston's 2.3 million residents. Bottled water is an acceptable substitute, public work officials said in a statement. The Houston Independent School District said that schools would be closed to employees and students Monday and that the closure could be extended depending on how fast the water problem is solved. We will closely monitor the situation and provide additional updates tomorrow, the district said in a statement. Mayor Sylvester Turner said in a statement late Sunday that the city is submitting a plan to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, seeking approval to lift the boil notice. The earliest the city could be liberated from the boil requirement would be Monday night, 24 hours after the notice was published, he said. We believe the water is safe, but based on regulatory requirements, when pressure drops below 20 psi, we're obligated to issue a boil water notice, Turner said. You believe the water is safe. You believe the water. This is the fourth largest city in our country. Mr. Mayor, you better know that the water is safe. I don't care about your beliefs. What does the data show? What are the facts? What do you know? Tell me what you know. Don't tell me what you believe, good sir. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said he was expediting the city's request to fast-track the water test results and analysis that could end the boil notice. We're currently working to fulfill the city's request for help with a rapid turnaround of water sample results, he said in a statement. A power outage Sunday at the East Water Purification Plant caused pressure to drop below 20 psi, or pounds per square inch, the state threshold that triggers boil water notices, Houston Public Works said. Not long afterward, water pressure was restored to acceptable levels in the city, but if there was contamination during the low-pressure episode, it might still be traveling through the system, explaining why a boil notice was in effect despite satisfactory pressure. Water system pressure can use the weight of liquid to occupy cracks and crevices that might otherwise be exposed to outside incursions, such as urban runoff. Similarly, hydraulic pressure is sometimes used in timepieces, specifically dive watches, to increase resistance to leaks as underwater pressure increases and pushes seals and parts together. In early 2021, Houston Public Works explained that its system is not dependent on gravity as those in other big cities. Houston's water system is different than other systems in that we don't use water towers to provide pressure to the system, it tweeted. We use ground storage tanks and pumps. It's not clear what caused Sunday morning's outage. The East Water Purification Plant is outside the city in Galena Park. CenterPoint Energy, the utility serving the area around the plant, said in a statement that the power outage was not a result of its service and that it may have been caused by an issue at the facility. So, in the year 2022, in the fourth biggest city in our country, a power outage at a water purification plant results in an entire city and millions of people being told it's not safe to drink, wash dishes, or bathe in the water that come out your faucet. That's wild. That's wild. And this is something that we continue to see. We saw in years. Even some people still in certain parts of Flint, Michigan, still say that their water is not what it is supposed to be. I've seen it in my neck of the woods, issues over across the bay with the water system. And most of the time we see it in underserved areas and in urban settings and in places, in neighborhoods and towns where socioeconomically the people are not at the point where they're made a priority by their government. And here we see it in the fourth largest city in our entire country. We're in the United States of America, the richest country in the history of the world, in 2022. And we have entire cities where people can't drink their water. This is a problem. This is an issue. This is an infrastructure issue and an infrastructure failing. This is a failing by the city. This is a failing by the government. And it keeps happening. It keeps happening. At what point are we going to address environmental standards in our cities? At what point are we going to truly invest in infrastructure? We had a giant bill passed. We had a whole lot of money that was set aside. What has been done with that money? And the people of Houston, this was trending online. I know this has happened a few days ago, but we wanted to talk about it on the show because it's important. A lot of people in the city of Houston found out about this boil notice by email. or by a post on social media. So many people were outraged because they saw a post from the city on the official social media account, and that was the only way that they were notified. They've been drinking the water all day. They've been bathing in the water. They bathe their children in the water. And then they're told it might be contaminated. It might not be safe. Hey, get your act together, City of Houston. Get your act together, State of Texas. Get your act together, American government. There's no excuse for us to, any part of this country, for there to be drinking water that is not safe. There's no excuse. And we've got to do better than that. I guess so far, that is the message of the show when it comes to the news and the world of politics today, is that we've got to do better. The state of Alabama's got to do better. The mainstream media's got to do better at holding companies accountable when they do things that are inappropriate and bizarre and have agendas that we don't know about. And here the government has got to do better, both state, local, and federal, at every level. We've got to do better to provide for drinking water that is safe and that is clean is such a bare necessity. It's a baseline need that we all have. And I've donated before to some of these wonderful organizations and groups that go across the world and dig wells for people in parts of the world where they don't have access to clean drinking water. And that's a wonderful thing. But a lot of times we're unaware that there are entire cities, entire towns, entire neighborhoods in our own country where this is an issue. And this happening in a city like Houston, this even being possible in a city like Houston in 2022, it just highlights that and reminds us of that. And we've got some work to do on that front. We've got to update and rectify some of these problems in our water systems, in our purification systems, in infrastructure, in piping, in environmental standards. And it's the government's job. It's the government's job. There's no excuses. The money is there, and the people of Houston, the people of Flint, the people of our country deserve clean drinking water. So get it done. Get it done, Mr. Mayor. Don't tell me about what you think. I think the water is safe. It should be all right. Get it corrected. Get it fixed. Make sure this doesn't happen again. There's no excuse for this in Houston. There's no excuse for this in our nation. And it's got to be covered. It's got to be highlighted so that we can be aware and so that we can be reminded and so that it can be corrected. Just like we want it to be corrected all over the world in places where they don't have access to clean drinking water, it's also got to be corrected in certain cities and states and parts of our country. This was just a 24, 48 hour, 2-3 day period in Houston, but it happens all over our country. And there's some places where the water is still not drinkable. There's places where it's labeled as drinkable, but hey, it's really not that healthy. It's not that safe. It's not that good for you. And there's no excuse. Our last story in the world of politics this week, Bruce Lee may have died from drinking too much water, new study claims. Yeah, we going from unsafe drinking water to drinking too much water. Because that's how we roll on this show, and your body is comprised of mostly water. You like 75% water, something like that. So we cover an H2O on the show. H2O, not Gatorade, but H2O. It's been nearly 50 years since Bruce Lee passed away suddenly on July 20th, 1973 in Hong Kong, and now new research claims that the martial arts icon died from drinking too much water. The study, conducted by a group of kidney specialists in Spain, was published in December 2022 edition of the Clinical Kidney Journal. And everybody has that on their reading list, the Clinical Kidney Journal. I usually do my reading about the pancreas, but if you want to read about the kidney, then subscribe to the Clinical Kidney Journal. I digress. They allege that the film star's death was caused by his kidney's inability to excrete excessive amounts of water. Officials initially ruled that the cause of death was cerebral edema or brain swelling. However, the authors asserted that the 32-year-old possessed multiple risk factors for hyponatremia, which means an unusually low sodium concentration in one's blood. They cited Lee's chronic fluid intake as well as the use of marijuana, which increases thirst. They also pointed out potential factors that could have interfered with the late star's kidney function, including alcohol intake and a history of injuries to the organ. The researchers noted that Lee's use of prescription medication could have also played a role in his kidney's function. Lee reportedly used meprobamate and aspirin medications for anxiety and pain. We hypothesized that Bruce Lee died from a specific form of kidney dysfunction, the inability to excrete enough water to maintain water homeostasis, read the paper. This may lead to hyponatremia, cerebral edema, and death within hours if excess water intake is not matched by water excretion in urine. Given that hyponatremia is frequent, as is found in up to 40% of hospitalized persons, and may cause death due to excessive water ingestion even in young healthy persons, there is a need for wider dissemination of the concept that excessive water intake can kill, it concluded. Over the years, Lee's death has sparked numerous conspiracy theories. Some fans believed he may have been assassinated by gangsters, while others insisted he was the target of a curse. His family's days were revisited in a 2018 book titled Bruce Lee, A Life, which hypothesized that he passed away from a heat stroke. The key to understanding Bruce Lee's death is that he collapsed 10 weeks before and almost died of the very same thing, author Matthew Polly said at the time. On May 10, 1973, he walked into a small dubbing room on one of the hottest days of the month, Polly explained. They turned off the air conditioner to avoid ruining the soundtrack. He immediately overheated and got dizzy. He left the room and still collapsed to the ground. He got back up, and when he walked into the heated room, he collapsed again and started violently convulsing. They got him to the hospital, and the doctor suspected his brain was swelling. And so for the first collapse looked exactly like a case of heat stroke. Lee's widow, Linda Lee Caldwell, told the Los Angeles Times in 1998 that Lee's death was caused by a brain swelling due to hypersensitivity caused by an ingredient found in Equagesic. However, Polly insisted Lee's final moments during a fiery heat wave in Hong Kong mimicked more of the symptoms he experienced before. At the time, there were dozens and dozens of rumors that he was poisoned, that ninjas got to him, that someone put a death touch on him, said Polly. There's no evidence of a cover-up. My conclusion is heat stroke. It's a very common killer of young athletic men. Polly claimed that a couple of months before the first incident, Lee had the sweat glands in his armpit surgically removed. He didn't think they looked good on screen, said Polly. It was his job to look good on screen, but that would have made it harder for him to dissipate heat. The current study did not find that temperatures were unusually high on the day that Lee died. It claimed that while Lee hadn't consumed a huge amount of water, his kidneys couldn't handle the normal amounts of fluids by then. So I thought that this was and I'm going to say it, very interesting article, a very interesting story. And I thought it was one worth sharing on the show. I happen to be a big Bruce Lee fan. The guy was a rock star. When you think martial arts, you think Bruce Lee. He was a celebrity. He was an incredible athlete. His reputation was one of mythic proportions. And his death was one that was shrouded in controversy because of that. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories about what actually happened to Bruce Lee. And I've heard most of them before. But one explanation that I have never heard or never considered is the one put forth by this most recent study. That because of the medications that he took, and because of alcohol consumption and drug use, and because of the natural state of his kidneys, he actually died from drinking too much water. And I knew that this is something that can happen. I remember a couple different times in the last decade where a young football player would pass away during two-a-days in the summer. And this is actually what they died from. Sometimes it gets labeled as heat stroke, but actually what they died from was drinking too much water. I remember one tragic story about an 18-year-old kid, was a freshman, was on the football team at school, wanted to make sure he stayed hydrated, so he carried around a gallon container of water. Drank a lot of water, and for whatever reason, his body wasn't able to excrete and keep up with the amount that he was intaking, and he passed away. Tragic. But this is something that happens. You're told all the time that you need to drink more water. Most of us walk around dehydrated all the time. But it can actually be a dangerous thing if you don't take care of yourself, if you have mitigating factors. If your outtake isn't able to keep up with your intake, it can actually be a very dangerous thing. And at least one study is suggesting that it was, in fact, a very dangerous thing for Bruce Lee, and is what wound up taking his life. At 32 years old. 32 years old. That's very young. I'm 33. I'm older than Bruce Lee was. What do you think about this study? What do you think about this theory, about this story? Is drinking too much water what led to Bruce Lee's death? Is this what happened? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I would love to hear your take on this story. Do you put any stock in what the study has found? Do you think that this might have solved a mystery? Do you think that the book is closed on what caused the death of Bruce Lee? Or do you think the jury is still out? I would love to hear from you. Email the show. Get at us on Twitter at InTheShed4 and let us know. That's all the news in the world of politics. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Germany World Cup exit labeled an absolute catastrophe. Iowa lands ex-Michigan quarterback McNamara as a transfer. Ex-Texas football coach Tom Herman takes over at Florida Atlantic. Patrick Peterson denies beef with Kyler Murray. Arrest warrant issued in Tampa for Antonio Brown. Michigan running back Blake Corum to have knee surgery. Atlanta Hawks lose forwards Hunter and Collins to injuries. Deshaun Watson cleared to return to game action. Houston men's basketball team ranked number 1 in AP poll for first time since 1983. And finally, Baylor football fires defensive and special teams coordinators after promising season ends with a 6-6 record. And I don't know if it's going to show up on the show. Maybe I'll be able to edit it out in post. But my neighbor's rooster will not shut up. This entire podcast, my neighbor's blind rooster has just been going at it. Just cock-a-doodle-doing all morning long. And that's the beauty of this show. I do not have a studio. This is bare bones, okay? I'm in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama for real. And so you might hear rain falling on the shed. You might hear my neighbor doing yard work. Or you might hear a blind rooster that loves to hear his own voice. It's just a part of the charm, part of the appeal, and one of the many reasons I'm sure that this show continues to grow. Back to sports we go. And we're going to talk some World Cup. Yeah, can you believe it? We are talking some soccer. A little bit of footy. We're going to talk about what's happening on the pitch on our show. I think going back to the very first episode of this show when I kind of gave you a lay of the land of what to expect, soccer might have been one of those sports I said that we would never talk about. But hey, my baby girl happened to play soccer the last 2 years. And I, as you know, was the head coach of a third place 6-year-old soccer team. So now I'm a little bit of an expert on the sport. I say that tongue in cheek, but I actually understand what's happening. And I have been really into the World Cup. I've watched every match the U.S. has played so far. I found it very entertaining, and I've really been on the edge of my seat. So the U.S. men's national team, we made it out of the group stage. We made it out of Group B. In our first match, we tied with Wales 1-1. That was a match where the U.S. played extraordinarily well in the first half. We were so aggressive. We were moving up the field, a lot of shots on goal. We took a 1-0 lead and then wet the bed in the second half. We lost all zeal. We were not the most aggressive team on the field in the second half, and Wales tied it up. We tied with Wales 1-1. The next match, we tied with England 0-0. We held the English scoreless, which was disastrous for them, but monumentous for us, because they have been and are a much better soccer program than we have had. But we tied 0-0. We tied. So it came down to our final match in the group stage against the nation of Iran. We had to win. If we lost, we were eliminated. If we won, we moved on. If we tied, we would be eliminated. And the U.S. won 1-0. It was the most exciting 1-0 game I've ever seen in any sport in my life. We had that 1-0 lead, and in the waning moments, we had to protect it against a desperate and aggressive Iran squad, and we did so. The U.S. moves on to the knockout stage, and now it's single elimination. Now it's March Madness. There's no more tying anymore. If at the end of stoppage time the two teams are tied, you get two 15-minute periods to decide the match, and if you're still tied, it goes to a shootout, which will be incredibly exciting. And the U.S. men's team plays the Netherlands. We play the Netherlands, I think it's like 9 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. I don't know what time that is in Qatar where the World Cup is happening, but I know that's 8 o'clock my time, and that's very early. And I got some things to do tomorrow, so I'm probably going to have to record it, put it on the DVR, come home and watch it later, but I will. And by the time this podcast episode gets out, that match will probably already be decided. Don't know that I'm going to get this episode out tonight because I'm taking my wife on a date. We going to dinner. We going to a movie. That's my lady. Haven't been able to take her out in a little while. We going out tonight, so podcast editing is going to come in second place, okay? I love you. Keep listening to the show. Keep supporting the show, but you're going to come in second place tonight. I'm going to let you know. So by the time this episode comes out, that match will probably have already happened. I hope that we can win. If the U.S. defeats the Netherlands on Saturday and makes it to the quarterfinals of the World Cup, it will be an incredible accomplishment. Christian Pulisic got injured in the last match, but it looks like he's going to be able to go for this one. We have the second youngest team playing. A lot of young talent. It kind of reminds me of a team that is too young to know that they're not supposed to be competitive with some of these teams. And we just out here balling. And we just out here playing for the love of the game and for country. And it's pretty fun. So in the knockout stage, there are 16 teams that will be involved. The teams that have already punched their ticket are the United States, the Netherlands, Argentina, Australia, France, Poland, England, Senegal, Japan, Croatia, Morocco, and Spain, with 2 more countries punching their ticket today. And basically those are a lot of countries where this show is listened to, okay? India is not there, and I regret that. We love you, India. Shout out, India. Put me on a billboard in India. I want to be on a billboard in India. Wish you were there. I would root for you. But those are the teams who are still in it. The World Cup has been a lot of fun, and I hope that the U.S. finds a way to win against the Netherlands tomorrow. Probably going to have to score more than 1 goal at some point in order to win, but if we are aggressive, if we get enough shots on goal, anything is possible. All right, let's move on to the world of college football, and let's take a look at the college football playoff rankings. The CFP rankings have come out. The playoff picture is a little bit more clear now. Georgia is ranked number 1 in the country still. Michigan slides up to the number 2 spot after putting a whooping on Ohio State. Sorry, Meemaw. TCU comes in at 3rd, and USC is 4th. With Ohio State at 5th and Alabama at 6th, which probably means, Alabama fans, that there is slim to zero chance that you make the playoffs. There's slim to a little chance, and Slim is about to leave town. The fat lady is preparing to sing. Nick Saban is still out here politicking for his team. I know Alabama fans want to make the case that they're one of the best 4 teams in the country, and they might be. I know that the playoff committee, if they can find any way to slip the Crimson Tide in, they will. But right now, Alabama is on the outside looking in. And there really aren't a lot of options on the board left for mass chaos. Georgia is in no matter what happens in the SEC championship game. So is Michigan likely. And I think TCU has earned their keep. Unless they get blown out in the Big 12 championship game against Kansas State, unless they lose by 3 scores, even with a loss, I think TCU belongs in the field. USC is the one outlier. USC plays in the Pac-12 championship tonight against Utah. If they win, they're in. If they lose, somebody else is getting in. And it will probably be Ohio State, and deservedly so. Our In the Shed with Wes rankings are updated as well, and they stand a little different than the college football playoff rankings. I have the same top 5 as the CFP poll: Georgia, Michigan, TCU, USC, and Ohio State. But then things start to differ in my poll. I have Tennessee at 6 and Alabama at 7. Both teams have 2 losses. They played head-to-head. Tennessee won. I have Tennessee 6 and Alabama at 7th. The CFP poll has Penn State at 8th. I have Washington. I have UTSA at 9, Penn State at 10, the Troy Trojans at 11, Clemson at 12, LSU at 13th, Florida State at 14th, South Alabama at 15th, Kansas State at 16th, Oregon 17th, Utah 18th, Oregon State 19th, Tulane 20th, UCLA 21st, South Carolina 22nd, Ohio 23rd, Notre Dame 24th, and UCF 25th. And look, I'll put our poll up there against any other rankings. I feel like our poll is the most fair. I feel like we're the only poll that gives you a fair chance based on what you've done on the field. Based on the schedule that you play, who you beat, what your record is. There's no reason that Troy and South Alabama at 10-2 aren't in the top 25 poll. To have 5 4-loss teams ranked in the top 25, but not have 10-2 teams like Troy and South Alabama, and a UTSA Roadrunner squad that's won like 8 games in a row, 9 games in a row, one of the hottest teams in the country. Those are top 25 teams. I know they don't play the hardest schedule in the country, but they can only play who they're scheduled to play, and they win. Those teams deserve to be ranked. I'm not ranking Texas at 8-4. I'm not ranking North Carolina, even though they're 9-3, because they've lost 3 games in a row. They're on a 3-game skid. They don't deserve to be in the top 25. And I'm leaving NC State just outside of the top 25. They play in a very weak conference. They have 4 losses. Rank the teams that win. Put the teams that win in. We're the only poll that gives the group of 5 a fair chance. The CFP poll only ranks UCF at 22 and Tulane at 18. But we include UTSA, Troy, South Alabama, and a very hot Ohio Bobcats team that has made their conference championship game as well. I would love to hear your feedback on our rankings. What do you think about us including UTSA in the top 10? What do you think about where we put Penn State or Oregon or Kansas State? What do you think of us ranking Tennessee ahead of Alabama? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4. I would love to hear from you about this. Other news in the college football world includes the coaching carousel. We now have some head coaches that have moved to new universities. And the first one that I want to highlight is my own Auburn Tigers, who have hired Hugh Freeze as their head football coach. Something that Ray Charles could have seen coming. No offense, Ray Charles. This was the expected outcome after Lane Kiffin decided to stay at Ole Miss. It was going to be one of those 2 guys almost from the outset. I think Lane Kiffin was the top choice for Auburn. But there was a contingent of influential boosters who wanted Hugh Freeze the last time Auburn had an opening, who wanted Hugh Freeze this time, and they got their man. And look, there's no doubt that Hugh Freeze is an excellent football coach. What he did when he was at Ole Miss, not all above board, but what he accomplished there on the field was impressive. What he's done at Liberty has been impressive. But I was really hoping that my school, the school I support, would go in a different direction. I wanted them to bring in Deion Sanders. That was my top choice. But aside from him, I really hoped they would give Cadillac Williams a look. Cadillac Williams, who is one of the best players in Auburn football history, who I watched in Jordan-Hare Stadium growing up as a kid, who's been the running back coach the last few seasons there, and who, when he was named the interim head coach for the rest of the season after Brian Harsin was canned, took over a team that was defeated in every measure of the word. A program that was defeated in every measure of the word. A fan base that was apathetic. A team that had lost 4 or 5 games in a row. And he brought a lot of life back to the fan base. And a lot of unity back to the fan base. And a lot of buy-in from former players. And from alumni. And from the students. And who really cared about the university and about the players. And about what Auburn stands for. And he really galvanized the program in a way that few people thought was possible in the remaining 4 weeks of the season. A season where Auburn only won 5 games and was not a good football team, had a terrible offensive line, had poor play at the quarterback position, struggled on special teams. There was talent and deficiencies in comparison to other SEC schools, a season that could have been a lost year, and it ended on a high note. And for people who don't follow Auburn, that sounds like a crazy thing to say. He only went 2-2 as the interim head coach. They didn't win all their games. They didn't make a bowl game. What is all the excitement about? I had people ask me, why are folks so excited about going 2-2? Well, if you watch the Auburn team earlier in the season, you would understand why. Because for the past 2 years under Brian Harsin, we saw a team that played considerably worse in the second half of almost every football game that they played. But under Carnell Williams, we improved in the second half of every football game we played. At the Mississippi State game, his first game as interim head coach, Auburn was down at halftime 24-6. And they interviewed Coach Caddy. And they said, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to convince your guys to be competitive? What adjustments can you make? And he said, you either fight or you give up. And we will not give up. And I thought, okay, Cadillac. I appreciate you, but sure. Sure, we've seen this before. But he was right. He was right. His team came out. They fought hard. They took the game into overtime. They beat Texas A&M. They beat Western Kentucky. And then they fought hard against Alabama on the road in the Iron Bowl. They ran for over 300 yards against Alabama with the same offensive line that struggled to run block all season. They managed to run for 300 yards and score 27 points against Alabama on the road. And the whole time you had buy-in from the players. And you had excitement from the fans. And you have a guy that really, truly understands and gets Auburn University. Understands what it takes for this program to be successful, understands what it's all about, understands what it means to the people. And I feel like Auburn's athletic department and their president had an opportunity to look character in the face and make a bold decision and take a chance to do something different and to do something impactful and meaningful beyond football. But instead they just chose win at all costs. We're going to put character to the side. And look, people deserve second chances. I'm not going to go on a campaign or a tirade against Hugh Freeze. We all know what he's done. We all know what his record is. He's going to be on a short leash moving forward. He's going to be watched very closely to see if he really has changed, if he really is going to behave, if he is a different person and a different type of leader. All of that aside, Auburn showed that their priority was nothing more than winning on the football field, not impacting young men. And they kept Cadillac on the coaching staff. He got a promotion to associate head coach. Well-deserved. I'm glad he's still there. I hope nothing but the best for my football team moving forward. But I wanted Dion, and if not, I was all in on Cadillac. We got Hugh Freeze. Probably a pretty good football hire. The rest remains to be seen. Other notable moves include Brent Key having the interim tag removed at Georgia Tech. I'm not sure why Georgia Tech wants to be mediocre in football. Nothing against Brent Key, but hey, you play in a Power 5 conference. You're located in Atlanta, Georgia. You should be a lot better than 3, 4, 5 wins a year. And you had an opportunity to go after somebody like Deion Sanders or to hire somebody like Kane Womack from South Alabama, or the coach from Troy, or somebody who is an up-and-coming coach, somebody that could really do something big, somebody that could recruit well, that can move your program into the upper echelon of the ACC, and you picked Brent Key. Again, no offense to Brent Key. Maybe he turns out to be a great coach, but to me right now, this looks like a swing and a miss for Georgia Tech. An opportunity missed. Luke Fickell from Cincinnati is going to Wisconsin. He's going to the Big Ten, and this is an interesting hire and a curious move to me. Wisconsin has a terrific tradition and history, and they're usually very good in the Big Ten and very competitive. They certainly have all kinds of resources necessary to be a team that competes to make the playoffs. But they've really struggled to find a quarterback in recent years. And Luke Fickell has that thing rolling at Cincinnati. They made the playoff, the first non-Power 5 team to ever make the playoffs. They've been ranked in the top 25 each of the last 3 seasons. They've been able to recruit at a level that their school never has before. And they're moving to the Big 12 next year. I kind of expected Luke Fickell to hang around, at least for a season in the Big 12. But instead, he's getting out while the getting is good. He's going to Wisconsin, a very good hire for the Badgers. Luke Fickell is a solid football coach. He fits Wisconsin. He fits that area of the country, that tough, hard-nosed style that they expected there in Madison. And I think it's a home run hire for Wisconsin. And there's still some good jobs open. The Cincinnati job is a very intriguing job. South Florida is a program that has a lot of untapped potential. And the Colorado job is still open. They've made an offer to Deion Sanders, who is playing in his conference championship game this Saturday. And then maybe we'll find out, is he interested in Colorado? Is he interested in Cincinnati? Is he going to South Florida? My guess is he could probably have his pick of any of those 3 jobs. And I think Cincinnati is the best choice to win right away. I think that South Florida might be the best fit for him, but I hope he picks Colorado, because Colorado has a rich history when it comes to college football, and they probably have the worst roster top to bottom of any Power 5 conference team. That includes Vanderbilt, by the way. That includes Northwestern and Stanford, by the way. Colorado has won 1 game this year, and they should be a lot better. And if they can hire Deion Sanders, that's a home run. It might take a little bit of time for it to show up on the field, for it to translate, but he will upgrade their talent from day one. With his recruiting ability, with the players that he can bring from Jackson State, with the transfer portal, in the transfer portal era, Deion Sanders is a gold mine when it comes to recruiting. And he will accumulate talent quickly and upgrade talent quickly if he goes to the Buffaloes, which I hope he does. Moving on to football in the professional ranks, let's take a look at the NFL playoff picture. In the AFC, it looks like this. The Chiefs right now have the top overall seed, followed by the Bills, the Titans, the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Bengals, and the Jets, with both the Patriots and the Chargers on the outside looking in. And they're both probably going to stay there. The Chargers, despite having one of the best rosters in the league and a quarterback that everyone keeps telling me is elite, they just can't do it. They can't stay healthy. They can't get over the hump. They can't put it together. They're a failure of a franchise. They are. They're a failure of a franchise. And we may never see a Bill Belichick Patriots team that is elite again. I'm not saying that Bill Belichick is not a good coach. I'm not saying that he's washed. But he's certainly inflexible. And they don't have the talent to compete with a lot of these other teams right now. The Jets are a surprise. They're a lot better than the Patriots are. They're just a quarterback away. They have a very good defense. Will Mike White continue to be the answer and look like the answer for the Jets as he appeared to be last week? The Bengals are improving and rounding into form late in the year. The Dolphins are a team that I'm very high on. The Ravens are always dangerous with Lamar Jackson. The Titans are very well coached. I don't feel like they're a Super Bowl contender, but they are very well coached and a very disciplined football team. And the class of the AFC are the Bills and the Chiefs. Love them, hate them, they're the class of the AFC, the Bills and the Chiefs. And I think the only 2 teams that pose legitimate playoff threats to those 2 teams are the Dolphins and the Bengals. Because of the quarterbacks that they have and the level that they're playing, the level that those offenses can reach, I think the Dolphins and the Bengals could be a threat to the Chiefs or the Bills, especially how things happen in playoff football on any given Sunday. But the Bills and the Chiefs are the class of the AFC as it stands right now. In the NFC, it's led by the Eagles, who are 10-1, the Vikings, the 49ers, the Buccaneers, who are 5-6 but are at the 4th spot right now. They're leading their division at 5-6. If they can just continue to get healthy, if they can win their division, if they can continue to get healthy and they can make the playoffs, they can host a playoff game. If you have Tom Brady, even with a poor offensive line, even on a down year, even at 45 years old, if you make the playoffs and you have Tom Brady, you have a chance. After the Buccaneers are the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Commanders. Washington, who is playing a lot better football. And then there's still Seattle and Atlanta with a small chance to make the playoffs as well. Atlanta with a very small chance. Certainly in the NFC, you have a lot of surprise teams, starting with the Eagles, who are much better than most people expected. Even those who thought they would do well did not have them sitting at 10-1. Jalen Hurts is an MVP candidate. Their defense is very good. Their roster is stacked. Their head coach looks like a good choice. The Vikings are 9-2. And it's hard for me to trust Kirk Cousins in the playoffs. It's hard for me to trust the Vikings in the playoffs, but they look like a legitimate Super Bowl contender. The Cowboys are 8-3. I still say prove it to Dallas. And the two teams that in the NFC are most interesting to me are the 49ers and the Buccaneers. Because the Buccaneers play in a terrible division and they're not a very good football team. But they could be. And they have been. And if they make the playoffs, they can certainly be dangerous if healthy. And then the 49ers. The 49ers who have a very good head football coach. The 49ers who have a solid quarterback. The 49ers who went and got Christian McCaffrey to pair with Deebo Samuel to make their offense even more potent. Guys that they can put all over the field. Their defense is rabid. So if I had to guess, even though the Eagles are 10-1 and looking great, the Vikings are 9-2. If I'm looking at the NFC, I'm going to give the nod to the 49ers right now. I am. I'm going to give the nod to the 49ers right now. And I think the Buccaneers could be dangerous, and I still don't trust the Cowboys. Look, they're a good football team. I still don't trust them. Show me, don't tell me, Dallas. Show me, don't tell me, Mike McCarthy. Show me, don't tell me, Dak Prescott. Great regular season team. Show me in the playoffs. That's all the news in the world of sports. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of the paranormal, where our first story takes us to the great state of Colorado. Dozens of cattle slaughtered by mystery creature that left no tracks. In October, 18 dead cows were found near the town of Meeker, Steamboat Pilot and Today reported on Sunday. Some but not all had injuries consistent with wolf predation, but officials from Colorado Parks and Wildlife have found no tracks or evidence of them in the area. But whatever is killing the cows appeared to still be on the rampage. Since October, as many as 40 dead cows have been found around the same area. Wildlife officials have done everything they can to try and find the animal. They've set up trail cameras and aerial flights and still have found no trace of the culprit, the newspaper reported. Colorado Parks and Wildlife Northwest Regional Director Travis Black said on November 17th, according to Steamboat Pilot and Today, "It's perplexing. It's confusing. It's frustrating trying to figure out exactly what occurred in this incident. We have no evidence of wolves in the area. That doesn't mean that they're not there, but it makes little sense." Further investigation into what may be killing the livestock are still underway. Cows can develop a number of fatal diseases. Wildlife officials believed it could be the Clostridium bacteria, which can cause gut distress and subsequent death in cows, but veterinarians have ruled it out, Sky High News reported. "We're scratching our heads," Black told the CPW. "Although wolves may still be the cause of the deaths, there's little evidence to establish it. What we're lacking, in my opinion, is that typical feeding behavior that we would see. Typically, wolves would come back and feed on a carcass," Black said. And I know that thanks to Yellowstone. I learned that from Yellowstone. Very educational program. Thank you, Mr. Cosner. I digress. The incident comes as gray wolves are slowly making a comeback to the state. Gray wolves used to be abundant in the state before they were completely eradicated by the 1940s. Colorado is also aiming to implement a wolf reintroduction program approved by voters in 2020. The plan, which aims to reintroduce more wolves to the state by the end of 2023, is to be presented to the CPW Commission on December the 9th, according to the Steamboat Pilot and Today. Wolves sometimes migrate into Colorado from nearby states. There are likely populations from the northern Rockies across Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. If wolves are the predators responsible for the killings, it would mean that they are passing through into Colorado earlier than is seasonally expected. The decision to reintroduce the species has not always been popular. Some farmers were concerned about the wolves taking their livestock, but biologists have said that the reintroduction is vital for the state's ecosystem as it would restore predator-prey balance in the area. Executive Director of the International Wolf Center, Grant Spicklemer, what a name, Grant, what a name, told Newsweek, the presence of wolves can bring many benefits to wildland ecosystems, but their ability to thrive is directly dependent on how well they're tolerated by local human populations. Colorado is home to a variety of other species such as the mountain lion, but officials have not confirmed whether that species is a potential suspect. It's not certain how many wolves are in Colorado, but in 2020, wildlife officials established there were as many as 6. And that doesn't seem like a large number. In 2021, one of them gave birth to 6 pups. So we up to 12. We up to 12 possible wolves if my math is correct. But it remains unclear how many remain. In October, 3 female wolves were found dead in Wyoming near the Colorado border. We back down to 9. Officials believe they belong to Colorado's only wolf pack. Unfortunately, wolves can't see state boundaries, and it's easy for them to cross borders into zones where they're less tolerated, Spicklemer said. In Wyoming, it's legal to hunt the species at any time without a hunting permit. In Colorado, however, wolves are a protected species, and hunting them is illegal. So, a large number of cattle have turned up dead in Colorado, and all of the experts cannot figure out why. They can't figure out what's going on. And this story goes out to my good friend Cherry from St. Louis. Here you go, Cherry. Here is another unexplainable wildlife occurrence that we're covering on the show. Add it to the tally. They think it may be wolves, but they have no evidence to go on. There apparently is only one wolf pack that they know about in the entire state of Colorado, and these incidents don't really match up with the typical predatory behavior of a wolf. Wolves usually make the kill, they return to eat. That has not happened here. In addition, they have found no tracks. They have seen nothing on the trail cameras they've put up. They've seen nothing from the aerial searches that they have done, indicating it may be a wolf pack. Is it other wildlife like a bear? Could it be mountain lion or mountain lions? Or is there a natural explanation like some type of disease that they have not caught yet? That they have not determined to be the culprit yet? Or, and I'm just spitballing here, I'm just throwing this out there. Chupacabra. Could it be the chupacabra? Could there be a more cryptozoologically pleasing explanation for all of these deaths of these cattle without explanation or evidence? Like a chupacabra or some other type of cryptid. Or it could be something like insurance fraud. These cattle, when you own a bunch of cattle, you have insurance on those cattle. Did we make sure they weren't poisoned? Did we make sure they didn't eat anything, that nothing got into their water? Have we checked all options in this scenario? How thorough has the investigation been? What's going on in Colorado? What's causing all of these deaths of cattle? What about coyotes? You suspect that it's wolves. I know coyotes aren't typically big enough, but what if they have mated with this wolf pack? What if you got a hybrid situation going on? There's a lot of possibilities, and I don't know. It could be something simple. It could be disease. It could be wolves. It could be mountain lions. It could be aliens. It could be that the cows ate something that they shouldn't have ate. Or it could be the chupacabra. And right now, until we get some evidence, that's my vote. Just for the sake of it and for the argument of it and for the fun, I vote chupacabra. But those who aren't having fun with the situation, of course, are the farmers, because this is their livelihood at stake. They need to know what's going on. I'm all for reintroducing wolves into the ecosystem. I think that it helps. I think that it helps restore nature back to being nature. But you're going to run into incidents like this. And it's handled differently from state to state. There's different rules and regulations on what you can and cannot do. But if you watch Yellowstone, spoiler alert, just make sure you don't shoot the ones with the collars, okay? Just don't shoot the ones with the collars, cowboy. From Colorado, we go to space for our next story. Scientists create baby wormhole as sci-fi moves closer to fact. In science fiction, think films and TV like Interstellar and Star Trek, wormholes in the cosmos serve as portals through space and time for spacecraft to traverse unimaginable distances with ease. If only it were that simple. Scientists have long pursued a deeper understanding of wormholes and now appear to be making progress. Researchers announced on Wednesday that they forged 2 minuscule simulated black holes, those extraordinarily dense celestial objects with gravity so powerful that not even light can escape, in a quantum computer, and transmitted a message between them through what amounted to a tunnel in space-time. Why? Why, science? Why? Why are we out here making artificial black holes and wormholes when we don't even understand what the ones that already exist in the natural world can do and what they're for and how they were established? We know so little about it, and we out here trying to recreate it. We're too smart for our own selves. We're too smart for our own good. And it might just be me. This might be exciting to you. This might sound like good news. But to me, it just sounds like a bad idea. But hey, that's just me. I digress. It was a baby wormhole, according to Caltech physicist Maria Spyropoulou, a co-author of the research published in the journal Nature. But scientists are a long way from being able to send people or other living beings through such a portal, she said. Experimentally, for me, I will tell you that it's very, very far away. People come to me and they ask me, "Can you put your dog in the wormhole?" Who asks you that, Maria? Who is coming to you being like, "Hey, could you put Bingo through that wormhole? You send my dog through that wormhole? Hey, Maria, could you send my dog through the fabric of time?" Who is asking this question? So, no, Spyropoulou told reporters during a video briefing. That's a huge leap. There's a difference between something being possible in principle and possible in reality, added physicist and study co-author Joseph Liken of Fermilab, America's particle physics and accelerator laboratory. So don't hold your breath about sending your dog through the wormhole. But you have to start somewhere, and I think to me it's just exciting that we're able to get our hands on this at all. The researchers observed the wormhole dynamics on a quantum device at Alphabet's Google called the Sycamore Quantum Processor. A wormhole, a rupture in time and space, is considered a bridge between two remote regions in the universe. Scientists refer to them as Einstein-Rosen bridges after the two physicists who described them, Albert Einstein and Nathan Rosen. Such wormholes are consistent with Einstein's theory of general relativity, which focuses on gravity, one of the fundamental forces in the universe. The term wormhole was coined by physicist John Wheeler in the 1950s. Spyropoulou said the researchers found a quantum system that exhibits key properties of a gravitational wormhole, but was small enough to implement on existing quantum hardware. It looks like a duck. It walks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. So that's what we can say at this point, that we have something that in terms of the properties we look at, it looks like a wormhole, Liken said. The researchers said that no rupture of time and space was created in the physical space in the experiment, though a traversable wormhole appeared to have emerged based on quantum information teleported using quantum codes on the quantum processor. Quantum. These ideas have been around for a long time, and they're very powerful ideas, Liken said. But in the end, we're in experimental science, and we've been struggling now for a very long time to find a way to explore these ideas in the laboratory. Didi, stay out of my laboratory! And that's what's really exciting about this. It's not just, well, wormholes are cool. That is a way to actually look at these very fundamental problems of our universe in a laboratory setting. So, y'all just out here creating tiny wormholes. Y'all just out here just messing with the fabric of time and space. And it makes me wonder, to what end? For what purpose? Are we trying to make time travel possible? Are we trying to be able to travel interstellarly, across the galaxy in ways that aren't possible currently? Are we trying to send messages to distant locales across the galaxies? Are we trying to replicate technology that we know exists but that we don't have yet? Hey, what's really going on? What are you really up to, Scientist Maria? What are y'all really trying to do out here making these baby wormholes? These tiny, cute little baby, these 6-pound, 8-ounce baby wormholes. And what you trying to send? They try to minimize it, make it sound like it's no big deal. People keep asking me, hey, can you send my dog? Haha, we can't send a dog. What you trying to do? What you trying to do? Doesn't seem like a good idea to me. But that's just me. What do you think? Is this exciting news to you? Does this sound like a good thing to be doing? A good use of resources and time? What do you think the motive is? What are we trying to accomplish? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4 and let me know. I would love to hear from you. From one bad idea in science to another, we go from space to Neuralink. Elon Musk's Neuralink hopes to implant computer in human brains in 6 months' time. Neuralink has yet to achieve its primary goal of implanting a computing device into the brain of a human. And yet, in typical fashion for an Elon Musk venture, the company is already bounding ahead, aiming implants at other body parts. During an event Wednesday night at the company's headquarters in Fremont, California, Musk revealed work on 2 major products in addition to the brain-computer interface, which would need to be drilled into a person's skull and would initially be used to treat traumatic brain injuries. Neuralink is also developing implants that can go into the spinal cord and potentially restore movement in someone suffering from paralysis. And the company has an ocular implant meant to improve or restore human vision as well. As miraculous as that may sound, we are confident that it is possible to restore full body functionality to someone who has a severed spinal cord, Musk said at the event. Turning to Neuralink's vision work, he said, even if they've never seen before, we're confident that they could see. Parallel, Neuralink has been refining the main product for the brain, which consists of a tiny device and electrode-laced wires, along with a robot that carves out a piece of a person's skull and implants the wiring. Ongoing discussions with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration have gone well enough for the company to set a target of its first human trials within the next 6 months, Musk said. The goal of the brain-computer interface, known as a BCI, is initially to allow a person with a debilitating condition, such as ALS or the after effects of a stroke, to communicate via their thoughts. The company demonstrated that with a monkey telepathically typing on a screen in front of it. The Neuralink device translated neurological spikes into data that can be interpreted by a computer. Musk's hope is that the device could one day become mainstream and allow for the transfer of information between humans and machines. He's long argued that humans can only keep up with the advances being made by artificial intelligence with the help of computer-like augmentations. You're so used to being a de facto cyborg, Musk said, but if you're interfacing with your phone, you're limited. This has been the case with previous Neuralink events. Some of the things demonstrated by Musk and his team have already been accomplished in academic settings. The company's critics have long accused Musk of overhyping Neuralink's advances and overpromising what the technology will be able to do in the near future, if ever. Brain-machine interface technology has been researched and advanced by academia for decades. Musk's entry into the arena, however, has spurred a wave of investment from venture capitalists into startups and helped push the field forward at a much more rapid clip. A couple of similar startups are ahead of Neuralink when it comes to human trials. Synchrone, for example, has been able to implant a small stent-like device into the brains of patients in Australia and the U.S. The product has made it possible for patients who are unable to move or speak to communicate wirelessly via computers and their thoughts. Onward Inc. has also done breakthrough work restoring some movement in people with spinal cord injuries. The type of brain surgery proposed by Neuralink is far more invasive than that of Synchron or most other competitors in the industry. A patient must have a chunk of their skull removed and allow wires to be implanted into their brain tissue. Neuralink has been doing tests for years on primates to prove that the surgery is safe and the implant can remain inside the brain for long periods without causing harm. Animal rights groups have been critical of the primate's past treatment when Neuralink relied on a partner laboratory for some of its experiments. Neuralink brought its animal husbandry program in-house years ago and has endeavored to make it an example for others. Neuralink's advantage over its rivals is one of processing power. Musk's bet is that more invasive surgery coupled with greater computing capabilities will help Neuralink's hardware achieve better results and restore more functions in humans than competing products. Musk's company has already missed some of the billionaire's ambitious timelines for planning the BCI implant in people. In meetings with his team over the last several months, Musk being Musk, urged his engineers in blunt terms to work faster and harder. "We will all be dead before something useful happens," Musk told his team during a recent product review meeting. "We need to step it up. We need to ship useful products." During the same meeting, Musk expressed fear that advances in AI would outpace the work being done at Neuralink, rendering the company's efforts worthless. Some of Neuralink's main concerns with the BCI implant have been making sure that the robot can perform surgeries quickly and with minimal harm to the body. Musk foresees a day when people get brain implants as a quick outpatient procedure. Paralysis and ocular work has began relatively recently, and Musk has been pressing his team to advance the technology at a record pace. Autumn Searles, the animal care director at Neuralink, has been working to make sure that the experiment done on the primates and pigs are conducted in a safe manner and has been implementing new techniques to train them. Neuralink has an enclosure for the primates in Fremont that includes toys and televisions to keep the animals entertained as people check to see how their implants are functioning. In recent months, the animals had to leave their cages and be restrained to have their implants recharged. More recently, however, Neuralink devised a more relaxed setup that lets the primates recharge under a helmet in their cages while they eat. The company is building out a much more expansive animal enclosure at a campus in Austin, Texas. Although still very much in its early days, the totality of work being done by Neuralink makes it the only general-purpose BCI company. Other startups have focused on the brain or the eye or the spinal cord. Meanwhile, Neuralink really hopes to do it all. No. No. Nuh-uh. No, thank you. No. No. Not for me. Not never. Not now. Not then. Not later. Not in 1,000 years. Not after trials. No. 1,000 times no. I do not want to be a machine. Okay. And look, when it comes to the blind being able to see, and those who have been paralyzed being able to walk, and those who cannot communicate being able to communicate, those are all wonderful goals. And from that regard, for technology to be able to accomplish that is a miraculous and incredible feat, and something that anybody would get behind and support. However, the idea that a robot is going to remove part of your skull and implant wires into your brain, that is not something that I find to be at all relatively a good idea. I don't see how that could be safe. You see all these reports about how many of these primates have died and have had complications. We've reported about that on the show before. And look, I get what Elon is saying. The way that artificial intelligence and technology are progressing, he sees this as the only way for humans to keep up. That either we're going to be overtaken by artificial intelligence, or we're going to learn to basically be in sync with it. And he has a valid point when he talks about how we're already cyborgs because we are attached to our cell phones. We have this tiny computer that we carry around and check in with and are run by an algorithm all the time anyway. Okay. Valid point. That is an addiction that we all face. It's something that we grapple with. It's our reality. But when you start talking about removing part of my skull and implanting something inside of my body, that's where I draw the line. It's a hard pass for me, dog. And as much as I want people to be taken care of, as much as I support if they can do it in a safe way for the blind to see and for all of these miraculous things to happen, even if it gives you advantages being able to interface with technology in a record way and increase the bandwidth of your brain in a phenomenal way, even if that gives you certain advantages, I do not want those advantages, Mr. Musk. Hey, you can keep it. You can keep it. I'll be dumb. But I'll also be in charge of my own self, okay? Because one thing that I have learned about technology is that it's all hackable. It's all programmable. It's all able to be controlled by somebody who made it. And whether that's artificial intelligence, whether that's designers, whether that's engineers, I don't want to be a part of that when it comes to my body or my brain. Okay. And I know some people only see this as a scientific achievement. Some people are going to be laughing at this segment of the show, call me an alarmist. I'm getting into conspiratorial projection here. That's fine. This seems like a bad idea. I don't want any part of this. I don't want this to be in my future. I don't want this to be in the future of my children. I don't want to merge with the machines. I want to be human. I want to live the human experience. I want to have autonomy over my own body. I want to have the choice to interact with technology or not at my own pace. Not a fan of Neuralink. I don't care that Elon Musk bought Twitter. I still use it. I'm not an Elon Musk fanboy. I'm not an Elon Musk hater. This isn't about Elon Musk. It's about artificial intelligence. It's about humanity. And for me, it's where I draw the line. And I did a poll on Twitter leading up to this show being recorded. If you could be one of the first 100 people to get Neuralink implanted in you at no cost, would you? And the two choices were something like no way or hook me up. And I was flabbergasted. I was shocked that a majority, a small majority, but a majority of people said, hook me up. I thought it would be 75-25 people saying I want no part of it. But most people were like, hey, make me a video game. Have you not seen iRobot? Starring that Chris Rock slapper. Have you not seen iRobot? I don't want the robots to drive my cars, or to fix my dinner, or to be a part of my brain. My brain already has wiring, and it might not fire as quick as some other wiring. It may not be the fastest computer that there is out there, but I've made peace with that. And hey, I'm a big deal in India, okay? No thank you, Elon. Not for me. Our final story in the world of the paranormal: is spontaneous human combustion real? For several centuries, people have debated whether human beings can spontaneously combust or burst into flames without being ignited by an external source. Though the first known accounts of spontaneous human combustion date all the way back to 1641, the phenomenon phenomenon gained wider exposure in the 19th century after popular author Charles Dickens used it to kill off one of the characters in his novel Bleak House. When critics accused Dickens of legitimizing something that did not exist, he pointed to research showing 30 historical cases. More recently, cases of spontaneous human combustion have been suspected when police and fire department officials have found burned corpses with unscathed furniture around them. For instance, an Irish coroner ruled that spontaneous combustion caused the 2010 death of 76-year-old Michael Flaherty, whose badly burned body was discovered near a fireplace in a room with virtually no fire damage. Because the human body is composed mostly of water and its only highly flammable properties are fat tissues and methane gas, the possibility of spontaneous human combustion being an actual phenomenon, we already did the song, seems remote. Many scientists dismiss the theory altogether, arguing that an undetected flame source such as a match or a cigarette is the real culprit in suspected cases. Typically, deceased victims are found close to a fire source, and evidence suggests that many of them accidentally set themselves on fire while smoking or trying to light a flame. On the other hand, believers point to the fact that the human body has to reach a temperature of roughly 3,000 degrees in order to be reduced to ashes. Unless spontaneous human combustion were a genuine factor, it seems impossible that furniture would not burn as well. Proposed causes of the supposed phenomenon include bacteria, static electricity, obesity, stress, and most consistently excessive consumption of alcohol, but none have been sustained by science so far. One recent hypothesis comes from British biologist Brian J. Ford, who in August of 2012 described his experiments with combustion in the magazine New Scientist. According to Ford, a buildup of acetone in the body, which can result from alcoholism, diabetes, or a specific kind of diet, can lead to spontaneous human combustion. So, spontaneous human combustion. What do you make of this phenomenon? What do you think is really going on? Is there always a scientific explanation? Is there something simple like a cigarette or combustible fluid that they were nearby? Or is there something happening within the body that we yet do not understand and cannot explain? This is something I've always found to be interesting. I remember being in like 6th grade and checking out a book from the library at school about unexplained phenomena. And they had a chapter on spontaneous human combustion. And it was one of the first things that I read that piqued my interest when it came to where the paranormal and science meet. The crossroads between what we can explain through science and what we cannot. What happens in the world that we just don't have an explanation for. And I think spontaneous human combustion fits into that category. Because in so many of these cases, and you can look them up, we're not going to detail all of them here, but there's 40 or 50 pretty well documented cases throughout history that I've been able to find and read and look at, where it was suspected that it was a case of spontaneous human combustion. And in several of those cases, there has been some type of scientific explanation given, even if it was not considered a foolproof answer or a certainty. There's been some type of scientific explanation given. But there's also a handful of cases where all the so-called experts just throw up their hands and go, I really don't know. I really don't know what happened. I really can't explain it. A situation where somebody's body is badly burned and there's no evidence that their body was moved, but nothing around them is burned at all. What happened in that case? What happened in that scenario? What unfolded for something like that to even be possible? And you see a lot of possibilities from different chemical imbalances in our body that make us more flammable from the inside somehow, to people who are alcoholics and how that has an effect over the course of many, many years of hard drinking on your body, and what might that mean in a situation like this. And you see a lot of situations where people compare it to like a candle that has fuel on the inside, and how we might reach a place where we have these chemicals in high amounts on the inside that turn that fat deposit in our body into something that is flammable at a rate that's not normal and that isn't common. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not that smart a man. I'm just a guy in a shed in Alabama who finds it to be interesting, who thinks it's worth talking about on a news show, who wants to ask your opinion and see what you know and what you've researched and what you found out. What explanations you can come up with and what you think is fascinating or not fascinating about spontaneous human combustion. Do you rule it out completely? Do you think it's a bunch of bunk? Is it just a myth? Is it nothing more than an urban legend? Or is there something there, something that maybe we can't explain with science yet, but that we'll be able to in the near future? Or does it have a more paranormal explanation? and a paranormal bent. I've seen everything from chemical imbalances and alcoholism blamed, to issues of demonic possession, to conspiracy. I've heard a lot of possibilities and a lot of explanations, but the jury is still out. It does seem like an overwhelming majority of the people in these cases where spontaneous human combustion is expected suffered from alcoholism. That does seem to be kind of a thread that runs through most of these cases. There's always extenuating circumstances and health realities and concerns that exist in these cases, but so many of them remained unsolved to this day. So many of them have details that just aren't explainable, that just don't add up, that just don't make sense. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of spontaneous human combustion, but if I had to make a guess, I would put more chips on the side that it is a real phenomenon. That even if it can be scientifically explained in the future, it's something that we don't understand yet, but it is something that is really happening on very rare occasions. I just think there's too many cases, too many suspected cases of spontaneous human combustion, where we just can't find answers or explanations, where the facts just don't add up, where we're just unclear. What do you think? Is spontaneous human combustion real? If so, how do you explain it? Is it made up? Is it a myth? If so, why are there so many cases where we just can't figure out how what happened? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4. Let us hear your take on this phenomenon. Let us hear what you think. I would love to read it on air. I would love to follow up next episode with some of your theories and some of your opinions. I would love to learn from you. That's all this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 56. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at InTheShed4. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, talk some sports, and finally, possibly learn together whether or not O.J. Simpson was actually guilty. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling weekend. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scout. Meemaw, we made it!